Hi, this is John Linneball, and I'm with John Linneball Tutoring, and this is the Final Stretch SAT/ACT COVID edition. First things first, you want to make sure that you're on. So you want to check the College Board's SAT site to make sure your center hasn't canceled or rescheduled the test date or moved the test site. So you can go here to https://collegebord.org/register/test-center-closing, and I can control and click on this, and it should give me the test thing here. All right, so SAT center closings, we can go here, we can list these things, we can go to the US, and we can say, okay, September 26th, we can say, all right, let's try California, and let's try San Diego. Why? Because we can. Okay, so San Diego, Mount Carmel High School, San Diego Jewish Academy. Okay, so there's definitely a few that have been canceled or rescheduled from that date. And okay, you can cross-check that against test centers that you can find. So, all right, let's see where to take this on your chosen test date. Let's go a little further into the future, and we'll find California, and here's San Diego again. Gotta spell it right or it's not gonna work, is it? Okay, so submit. So here we have E3 Civic High School, Junipero Serra High School, Mark Twain High School, Mount Carmel. Okay, so there's a lot of pretty good ones there. Okay, and all right, so ACT, you can go to www.act.org, content, and /ACT/EN, products and services, /the ACT, test day, rescheduled test centers. And we can click on that. And you see September and October 2020 ACT test center cancellations. And they list here, so you have Alaska, Alabama. All right, let's see if we can find anything in California. Okay, we have, doesn't look like anything in San Diego, but okay, Belmont. Well, Carlmont High School, I guess, is not going to have their tests. So Ontario, Temecula, Valencia. All right, so you can look and see if your high school is on here. For those of you in the Northeast, it's kind of like school closings on a snow day. I grew up in the Northeast, so I'm very familiar with that. I used to turn on the radio to hear if my high school was going to open on a day when there was heavy snow. But let's get back to this. Okay, so first you want to make sure you have all you need. First thing after you're sure that you're going to have to go and take the test anyway. So the checklist of things you need for the ACT, it's really not any different for the ACT. You can go to this website here, collegereadiness.collegebord.org/SAT/taking the test day checklist. So if we click on that, we get the test day checklist. So on the test day, you want to bring a face covering and wear it as directed by the test center. Remember to practice social distancing at all times, 6 feet apart. Don't get too close to people. Make sure you have a face covering, whether or not you think those things work. They do, but in case you don't, fine. Just do it. No one's going to let you into any building if you don't have a face covering on. All right, I would also suggest that you bring another face covering because just in case the one gets dirty, that'll be the day you get splashed by something going through a mud puddle. Truck goes through a mud puddle, you get it all over your face. You're going to want to have a different mask on rather than one that's dirty. Okay, or if you have breakfast and you can get some food on it or something. Anyway, approved calculator list. All right, the SAT's approved calculator list is here. So we can click on that. And you can see it's collegereadiness.collegebord.org/SAT/taking the test/calculator policy. You can bring your own calculator. In fact, you have to bring your own calculator. They're not going to provide you with one. They won't let you share with your friend. They won't let you share with your enemy. Ha ha ha. So bring one. Don't bring a brand new calculator. That makes sense. Bring one you know how to use. So probably just bring the one you already bought for chemistry or physics or math or whatever. And The math test includes, it does include some questions where you might just want to do it by hand rather than on a calculator, or you can write in the test book. So all those things are great. They have a list here too of acceptable calculators. It's even by brand: Casio, Hewlett-Packard, Radio Shack, Sharp. Okay, so Texas Instruments, TI-383, 84, any of those are fine. I have a TI-30 as well as a TI-84, but you can probably find it here. Radio Shack, Sharp. Do they even have Radio Shack anymore? It must be an old calculator if you have a Radio Shack. And then some other random ones. Okay, you can't bring a smartwatch. You can't bring your laptop. You can't use your cell phone or your smartphone. I know, I use my cell phone all the time as a calculator. But anyway, anything that lets you reach the internet, has wireless, Bluetooth, cellular, audio, video recording. They don't want you communicating with anybody else, and they don't want you being able to take pictures, etc., of the test questions, because they don't want you sharing it so other people can cheat, or just so you can violate their copyright. So just use a normal calculator like the one you have for your classes. Okay, also anything that has a stylus or has a computer style keypad, pen input. Okay, anything you have to plug into an electrical outlet, no way, makes noise, or has a paper tape. And they even say it right here: calculator function on a mobile phone, so they really want to make sure that they get that through to you. Okay, photo ID. All right, collegereadiness.collegeboard.org/SAT. ID requirements, basically it's this. Okay, they will compare the information on your admission ticket to your photo ID with the test center roster to confirm your registration and identity. They won't let you in if these things don't match. This includes the use of a nickname on one item but your full name on another. So hopefully you registered using your full name, your ID has your full name, etc. All right, the staff is not required to hold your seat if you do not bring an acceptable identification. Oh boy, that's a nightmare. Back when I took it, you could just really come in with a letter on your school's letterhead saying what you looked like, and they would take that, which of course led to some professional SAT takers completely abusing that and just coming in with forged letters from a high school, because all you have to do is go to a different high school and use that forged letter, and then how would they know? As long as it looks like it came from a high school. Anyway. So your ID must be valid, unexpired photo ID that's government issued, so perhaps whatever state, or your passport, or your school ID. Okay, so school IDs from the prior school year are valid through December of the current calendar year. So, all right, so you could use 2015 to 16 through December 31st, 2016. Has to be original, has to have your full legal name, has to have a recent recognizable photograph that looks like you. Okay, clearly legible English test. They do have an SAT student ID form that you can get prepared by your school, or if you're homeschooled. So school official or notary, has to have an original photograph of you, your gender, your date of birth. It's signed. You're using this for up to 4 test dates. Okay, so make sure you have that. If you have to do this student ID form, make sure you get it done way in advance, because you don't want to be playing around with this on the day of the test or the day before the test, okay? Okay, so now medical accommodations. This is going back to the checklist here. Okay, so we get out of the ID requirements. We get out of the calculator. Test day checklist. Okay, you can bring an epinephrine auto-injector, so EpiPens or whatever EpiPen competitor product and knockoff, whatever. You can bring that without the need for accommodations. So if you have allergies where you need an EpiPen, you don't really have to do anything. They have to be placed in a clear bag and stored under the student's desk during testing. For policies on other medications and medical devices, contact services for students with disabilities. So here they have accommodations on College Board exams. All right, so they're already up to November 7th, 2020. So if you're planning on taking this coming test at the end of September, you had better get a move on and see if you can get some kind of late exemption or something like that. And if you're planning on taking November, December, February, again, well, really yesterday was the day you were supposed to have it in for November 7th. So get a move on that. You're going to need to let them know if you need any kind of accommodation, including medicine that you might need to take, etc. Okay, so the next thing is face covering. As I said, bring your face covering, bring an extra, just put it in your clear bag so that way anything happens to one face covering and it's dirty, nasty, you don't want to put it on your face. People are going to look at that and say that cannot possibly be protecting you. Just throw it out, put on your other one. Several sharpened pencils. They say bring, number 2, or if you're using drafting pencils, they might be labeled HB. Those are just the standard soft pencils that most people use. They should have erasers on the end. I would suggest you bring, a nice pink pearl, some kind of eraser that you can use to, in case you need to erase a lot of something, or, you just want to get a nicer angle of attack than the end of pencil eraser might give you. Bring a plastic pencil sharpener. The worst thing they can do is take it away from you, which is unlikely. Bring a watch, probably just a regular analog, the kind with hands watch. You can bring a digital if you want. I know they do make digital watches that have special timing sections for the SAT or the ACT. Don't need that, just a watch so you can set it so you know how much time. A lot of SAT prep and ACT prep people just tell you, set it to noon/midnight. And then just know that, okay, if the section is 40 minutes, then you know that when it says 12:40, you'd better be done. If it's giving you 52 minutes, then 12:52, you'd better be done. Clear bag, clear plastic bag, see-through, preferably, as your chemistry professor or chemistry teacher would say, colorless, or get one of those cheapo Walmart, whatever, cheap clear backpacks, that we have to have now in the days of school shootings to make sure you're not bringing in any contraband and you have to bring to conventions, etc. That way nobody can accuse you of sneaking anything in because they can see right through the backpack. Again, in case you didn't hear me the first 2 or 3 times, you can't use your cell phone, smartphone, etc. for a watch or a calculator on the test. Once you've used it to take Uber or communicate with your parents or whatever, just turn it off, stick it in your pocket, and forget about it. And make sure it's off, because if it goes off during the test, it's going to be a problem. So, transportation and pre-test issues. If you have not been to the test center to which you have been assigned before, go there before the test. See if you can walk there if need be. You can use Google or your local transit agency's site, such as 511.org in the San Francisco Bay Area, to see if public transit will get you there on a Saturday morning or Sunday alternate test date, or whatever date the test center has arranged to have it. I realize some schools have weekday test dates and things like that. Alternately, make sure you have Uber or Lyft or whatever ride application set up so you can take Uber, Lyft, whatever, to the test. Make sure you have credits or it's hooked into a debit card or credit card, because you really want that to go very smoothly if you're already panicked because your car broke down, your parents decided to go out of town, whatever. Your friend who was going to give you a ride decided to go out partying and was too hungover to take you to the test. Whatever happens, just make sure you have your bus pass. Make sure you have Uber/Lyft, whatever. Ideally, hopefully, you'll just get up early enough that you can just walk there. Do not be late. While my students have told me stories of their SATs or ACTs being held up for students who were late, not making this up, don't count on anyone doing that for you. Could be that the, in quotes, late students were standby students and they just didn't know it. But anyway, assume that Murphy's Law, whatever can go wrong will go wrong, applies here. That is, if anybody else is late, they're going to bend over backwards to accommodate them. But if it's you, even though they don't know you, for some reason, that's going to be a huge problem.
I ran out of gas. I had a flat tire. I didn't have enough money for cab fare. My tux didn't come back from the cleaners. An old friend came in from out of town. Someone stole my car. There was an earthquake. A terrible flood. Locust. It wasn't my fault, I swear to God!
And then just assume you have the world's worst luck and plan to get there 30 minutes early. So, hey, that way you'll probably get there quite early. If there's a place to get a light breakfast, McDonald's, bagel shop, something like that, just do it. I'm not saying overeat before the test. That'll slow you down, because then your blood's going to be in your stomach trying to digest your food rather than in your brain trying to make your brain work. Don't do that. Plus, it'll make you need to go to the bathroom, and you don't want to have to go to the bathroom during the test because they're not going to give you any extra time. And, even if you hold it till the break, do you really want to be running around during the break, using the bathroom, etc.? I wouldn't. So just go to the bathroom before the test time. Hopefully when you get up in the morning, should be the first thing you do. Go to the bathroom, and then that way you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to need extra time, because you won't get it. Do not argue rudely with exam proctors. Notice that I did not say do not argue with exam proctors. It's different. I'm just saying don't be rude to them. Now, generally speaking, exam proctors are like umpires, even when they're wrong, and I've heard the horror stories from my students. Yeah, they can be really wrong. They can be ridiculously wrong. One of them actually decided to start talking to the kids while they're taking the test. Like, oh, did you see such and such a movie? Whatever movie had just come out that she'd seen. And, of course, the kids must have looked at her like she had two heads. Why are you talking to us? We're taking the SAT. Anyway, but even when they're wrong, they're right. You can question their decisions. For example, one of the SAT tactics that I teach that's in the Barron's book is you can use the edge of your answer sheet for a ruler to measure different things that are, diagrams that are on the SAT. You can, but if an SAT proctor looks at you and says, hey, what are you doing? You can say, I'm just using the things that I'm allowed to use in a creative way. Nothing in the instructions says I can't. Hopefully they'll back off, but if they don't and tell you to stop, just stop. Or, ask them, say, hey, well, why don't you go get your supervisor, and if that's a problem, I won't do it. Hopefully they will. Hopefully the supervisor will say, well, actually nothing in the rules does say that they can't do this, and I've seen kids do it. But if they don't, just acquiesce. Just let them know, okay, I won't do it. You do want to at least say, I need to talk to your manager, and, you can be that type and see if the proctor can get a ruling. But if it doesn't go your way, take the freaking test. Do not waste more time on this, because you don't want to have to take this test again. If you do, in quotes, lose, and you shouldn't have, do make a note of what happened, see if you can get the names of the people, and complain to the College Board. Here is the email address, testcenter@info.collegeboard.org. If you have a complaint about a question that's ambiguous or erroneous, I have to take multiple choice tests all the time for a government job that I have, and they know me very well in human resources, because I will pick out questions and say, this is ambiguous, I know the question, I know the answer you want, but I'm just telling you there's an argument that this other answer is also correct and you should probably fix it. Or I did find one that was erroneous, and they got back to me and said, we didn't find a problem. And I'm kind of like, yeah, that's a bigger problem, that you weren't able to find the problem even after I explained it to you. But anyway, if you have a problem like that with the SAT, just go to satquestion@collegeboard.org. Do not be disruptive. If your phone goes off, it should be off and in your pocket, bag, etc. Don't answer it. Just handle it. It's kind of like when you're in any other kind of important meeting and the phone rings, you can't pick it up. So, do whatever the proctor tells you to do, including leaving if they ask you to leave. And in fact, the official SAT policy is they will ask you to leave and confiscate your phone to make sure you haven't done anything untoward, such as used your phone to cheat or take pictures of SAT questions, for example. They also won't be responsible if they lose or break your phone, which is what I already guessed at in earlier videos and why I told you in those videos to leave it at home. Yay me. Anyway, but no, seriously, they have that on... This is test center closings and phone and electronic device policy. So this is exactly what it is. It says right here, to ensure that no one gets an unfair advantage on test day, test center staff are required to collect and hold cell phones and other prohibited electronic devices during the test administration. You may not use or access the device until testing is complete. Well, of course, but it says, okay, if your device makes noise or you are seen using it at any time before testing is complete, including during breaks, it is grounds for immediate dismissal and score cancellation. The device may be confiscated and its contents inspected. The College Board is not responsible for loss or damage to personal items, including electronic devices, while you are in the test center. So my interpretation of that is they can take it, and if they break it, they're not going to pay for it. So just don't. It does say while you're in the test center. I guess you could ask, well, What happens if they confiscate it and you leave? Do they become responsible for it once you've left the test center? I don't know. I don't want to find out. If you've got a $1,000 plus iPhone, you don't want to find out either. So let's just not take these things unless you have to. If you do have to, make sure the gosh darn thing is off. Because, well, you may need to use it to Uber or Lyft your ride. I mean, I got that messed up. Anyway, if you need to take Uber or Lyft, obviously you're going to need the cell phone to contact them and get there. And you might need to text your mom or your dad or whoever's giving you a ride to and from the place. Just make sure the thing is off during the test. Don't talk to anyone, including talking to yourself, mumbling, thinking out loud. I'm the worst perpetrator of that kind of thing in the world, but anyway, just try not to do it. Try to do it very quietly if you do it, and hopefully you won't. Because if an exam proctor hears you once the test starts, there's a really good chance that they're going to ask you to leave and they're going to cancel your score, With your snack or your drink that they do say it's okay to bring, just don't eat your snack or drink your water except during the break, or at the very least, ask a proctor before you do it. I mean, we do have this thing, like, says nice to have, you can bring a drink or snacks, and it says for your break, so definitely do not eat during the test, because that's going to be very disruptive, especially if you're a loud eater, and, God, what if you spill it? Anyway, dress appropriately, be clean, etc. I mean, you don't want to be the kid who distracted other kids because you were half naked, or you stank because, God knows, whatever, you went camping the night before and you're dirty and you didn't have time to take a shower or something like that. So, no, you don't want to be the stinky kid, the naked kid, the distracting kid. Just show up, be normal.
No shirt, no shoes, no ties.
Right. Learn it. Know it. Live it.
Take the test, leave, and then you can be as weird as you want afterwards. Okay. So, finally, we've reached actual academic advice after all that administrative last-minute stuff. So, for the ACT and the SAT, first of all, for the SAT essay, the end box gives you the main point. So at the end of the passage, in the little box there, the College Board literally tells you the author's point and lets you know that showing how the author makes that point should be the topic of your essay. On the ACT, they give you the 3 different perspectives on the issue. So they tell you what the issue is and they ask you to discuss those perspectives. So I'm not really going to address that in this video. So, you should know that an essay written on some other topic other than what they tell you to write about in the box at the end of the passage that you have to read will score a 0, or close to it. An essay that merely agrees or disagrees with the author's point won't do too well either, because they want you to analyze how the author makes his or her point, not just what the author's point is and whether you agree with it. In fact, they don't want to know whether you agree with it or not, they just want to know how the author makes his or her point. So the instructions will be something like, write an essay in which you explain how the author builds an argument to persuade his or her audience that Americans need to greatly reduce their reliance on air conditioning. So that came from one of the essays, even though I took out the author's name. And, so this could be literally anything. Persuade his or her audience that Jack in the Box hamburgers are the best hamburgers ever. Doesn't really matter, they tell you what the point is here. So in your essay, analyze how the author uses one or more of the features listed in the box above, or features of your own choice, to strengthen the logic and persuasiveness of his argument. Be sure that your analysis focuses on the most relevant features of the passage. So what sticks out, talk about it, what's the point, they give you the point right here. Could be literally anything. You don't have to figure it out, it's right there. So just rewrite the instructions? Well, no, don't do that. You will need to provide actual examples in the body paragraphs, the ones between the introduction and the conclusion. It's a good idea to refer to them in the introduction and the conclusion. Now, the conclusion is just going to be kind of a rewriting of the introduction, that they use ethos, pathos, logos, to make whatever the point is. And you can leave space for the examples if you want in the introduction and the conclusion, such as ethos in the form of, then put space here and then say statistics, quotes from authoritative persons, and real life common sense examples of whatever. So these are called ethos, pathos, and logos.
Learn it, know it, live it.
Ethos, convincing evidence. You can think like ethics, things that you should know or things that are true, we all understand. Pathos, think pathetic, something that's sad, horrible. Doesn't have to be sad or horrible or weak, it just has to be something that appeals to your emotions. So can appeal to happiness, can appeal to patriotism, can appeal to love, etc. Logos is logic. So once you have evidence from ethos and pathos, which tells you how you should feel about something or how the author wants you to feel about something, logos is going to apply the ethos to the pathos and say, well, okay, if you believe this is good and this is something that'll lead to that, then you should do that. So that would be logos, logic. So ethos, pathos, logos, learn it, know it, live it. You're going to have to be able to define these things. It's going to help if you actually mention ethos, pathos, logos, even though you don't really have to. You can just use what they say. Evidence, powerful word choice, and logic. Anyway, if you don't know where to start on the body paragraphs, just pick one of the big three. Pick ethos, pathos, or logos, and explain how the author uses whichever one you start with persuasively. So you could say the author uses ethos persuasively by citing to statistics from authoritative sources. Then go to pathos. The author appeals to our sense of patriotism by asking where our country would be had the founding fathers not taken whatever action he wants you to take. And logos, well, if you believe that action is correct, then you should do whatever the author is telling you to do because that's the most effective way to make that action happen. Okay, so let's just do it in order. Ethos. All right, ethos is authoritative opinion, commonly known facts, news reports, history. News has been called the first draft of history, moral statements, rules, laws, statistics, scientific facts, basically anything most people would accept as true when coming from an authoritative source. So those could be surveys, articles in scholarly journals, historical facts, common sense observations about everyday occurrences, recent events, scientific and mathematical principles. Those are all ethos. Now, pathos and logos. Pathos is word choice, rhetorical tricks or techniques, and generally appeals to emotions. You can think murder versus justifiable homicide or self-defense. These things are all homicide. It all involves killing a human being. Murder is non-justifiable homicide. Justifiable homicide, well, okay, this person had to be killed, or as they like to say in the South, he just needed killing. And self-defense, well, yeah, this person didn't want to hurt anyone, but he didn't have any choice if he wanted to live. So those are definitely going to take possibly the same set of facts and make them look very different. Logos is straight up logic. Usually the logic in these passages is straightforward. Once you have facts, emotions, or morals that are ethos or pathos, you just apply logic to these facts, opinions, emotions, or morals to get a result. If you believe something is wrong, then you shouldn't do it. Otherwise, if you do it, either you're a bad person or it's not really wrong. Pretty straightforward from the logic. So here's the outline of how to write the SAT essay. So the layout is introduction, simple paragraph from the instructions. The author did a great job using ethos, pathos, and logos. You want to define each one and give brief examples of the ethos, pathos, and logos used in the passage to make his or her point. It's in the box at the end if you need to know what the point is. The ethos, find the facts cited in the passage, where they come from. Pathos, show how the language is chosen to appeal to your emotions. Logos, show the assumptions underlying the argument and the logic that relies on those assumptions. And conclusion, you want to rephrase the introduction about what a great job the author did. So pretty simple. Now the ACT, it's pretty similar, except you're not analyzing a passage, you're just analyzing some brief perspectives on an issue where you probably will have an opinion, such as should students have at least a C average to play interscholastic sports? Well, yes or no, and then there might be three different possible perspectives on it. Like one would say, well, yes, because academics are important, da-da-da. Others will say, well, some people can't be expected to do that well in school, but there's no reason to deny them the camaraderie and character development of sports, and another one might have some other thing. So I'll have a link here so you can look at the ACT essay and things like that. And all right. So things to know for the math section. You need to know how to grid in the, in quotes, grid in or student-produced response answers. You can see the free tests on the College Board site or in your SAT review book to learn how to do the grid in answers. You want to know how to factor numbers for the no calculator section. It will make the math much easier. So for example, if you have to multiply 144 times 3/4, well, you can say, all right, I know 144 is 12 times 12, which is 12 times 3 times 4. Oh, okay, 3/4, so these 4s cancel out. So I end up with 12 times 3 times 3, which I can pretty easily figure out as 108. So you want to know the information in the math facts box at the beginning of each SAT math section. On the ACT, they don't give you any math facts, but you don't, so you will have to know the things that are in the SAT math facts box because they don't give it to you and you will still need to know it. You will need to know the distance or work equals rate times time formula. You should know the quadratic formula, and you should know the coordinate formula for a circle that lets you know the center coordinates and the... All right, more math facts to know. So know the quadratic formula. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a, where ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Please, please, please know that there are going to be some questions on the SAT and the ACT where the only way to solve it is to use the quadratic formula or possibly completing the square. Most people like the quadratic formula better. So also you're going to need to know the coordinate formula for a circle that lets you know the center coordinates and the radius. So the equation of a circle, standard form, is going to be x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So there's also a general form which is a little different. You're going to have to know how to complete the square to convert a circle's equation from general form to center radius form. Even though nobody likes completing the square, you will need to know that. So, you guessed it, more math facts. So you should know that the sum of the internal angles of a polygon with n sides or vertices is n minus 2 times 180. And notice that the sum of the external angles, taken one per vertex, is 360 degrees. So each external angle given a regular polygon is 360 over x degrees. So we can see here, these three are going to add up to 360. You see these 5, watch that, they shrink, ooh, also 160. And you see that, there's 6, it shrinks, ooh, also 360. You need to also know right triangle trigonometry, sine, cosine, and tangent, how to compute them using a right triangle, and how to use inverse trig functions on your calculator to find an angle when you know it's sine, cosine, or tangent. So here we have 6 different functions. We have sine, cosine, tangent, also cotangent, secant, and cosecant. You don't really need to know cotangent, secant, or cosecant, except maybe on the ACT. And you, of course, you should know these other ones for the SAT 2s, like Math 1 and Math 2, probably especially Math 2. Anyway, other than that, just know sine, cosine, tangent, and they do give you the Pythagorean theorem, so h is equal to square root of x squared plus y squared. Please, 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 if you don't know the Pythagorean theorem, I don't know what to do. Sine, cosine, tangent, you can just remember it, SOH, so sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, then tangent is opposite over adjacent, so it's SOH. Also, you can go sine, cosine, tangent. Oscar has a headache over algebra, so sine is Oscar has, cosine is a headache, tangent is over algebra. Whatever works for you. Even more math facts to know. Get to know how to factor quadratic equations and how to multiply binomials to get quadratic equations. The processes are the reverse of each other, so just know how to FOIL, which is multiplying binomials to get the quadratic equation, and know how to, in quotes, reverse FOIL with the quadratic equation to get the 2 factors, the 2 binomials. You also want to know how to use the distributive property. to multiply numbers that are close to easy numbers. What I mean by easy numbers is everybody would know what 3 times 100 is, right? That's 300. So let's say I had to multiply 3 times 96. Well, all right, 96 is 100 minus 4. So 3 times 96 is the same as 3 times 100 minus 4. That becomes 300. 3 times negative 4 is 300 minus 12. And then you just subtract 12 from 300 to get 288. Notice that you managed to multiply kind of a tricky number without having to touch a calculator. They could put this on the no calculator section, so that's why you want to know this trick. You also want to know the properties of square roots and how to rationalize the denominator. So, for example, 1 over square root of 2 is equal to square root of 2 over 2 because you have to multiply it by square root of 2 over square root of 2. So you get square root of 2 times square root of 2 equals 2. 1 times square root of 2 equals square root of 2 because you have to rationalize the denominator in most math problems. Your math teacher definitely would make you do it, and the SAT generally does, but doesn't always make you do that. So if you don't see an answer choice with the radical in the denominator, see if you can multiply the top and the bottom by the same radical and then get an answer. Chances are you will. Even more math things to know. You need to know that the external angle corresponding to an internal angle of a triangle. So if we have angle 3 here, that's an internal angle. Angle 4 is the external angle that you add to it to make a straight line. Then that's equal to the sum of the other two internal angles. So 1 plus 2, angle 1 plus angle 2 is equal to 4. I don't mean that 1 plus 2 equals 4. Ha ha ha. So angle 1 plus angle 2 is the same as angle 4. Why? Because we know 3 and 4 add up to 180, and we also know 1 plus 2 plus 3, angle 1 plus angle 2 plus angle 3 has to add up to 180. So you want to know the properties of arithmetic sequences and geometric sequences. So arithmetic, you start with some number and just keep adding one. So here you go, 3 plus 3 is 6, 6 plus 3 is 9, 9 plus 3 is 12, okay, 12 plus 3 is 15. Then another one, if you have the sum of a geometric sequence, well, the geometric sequence is a times r squared, a times r cubed. So you know you start with a and then you just keep multiplying by the same number. So r is going to be the difference here, and you're just multiplying by the difference. So it's ar squared, ar cubed. Know the properties of exponents. I'll have a link here for you. Know the powers from 2, we know the powers of 2 from 2 to the 0, which is 1, to 2 to the 10th, which is 1024. Why? Well, because I live near Silicon Valley, and also they're just really helpful. Powers of 2 come up all the time on the SAT and the ACT. And know the squares of 0 through 20. Obviously 0 squared is 0, 20 squared is 400. Know everything between there because that'll be really helpful with Pythagorean theorem questions and things like that. Okay? The more you know along these lines, the less you need to use your calculator. The less you need to use your calculator, the less likely you are to make a mistake because you hit the wrong button, or the less likely you are to feel like, oh my god, I don't know how to do this, and it's on the non-calculator section. You won't be in trouble if you know how to do these things. All right. Reading strategies. So you want to do the vocabulary and context questions first. Read the contexts, the surrounding words, maybe 3 or 4 lines up and down, whatever you need. They're usually the easiest, but the trick is a lot of the time they're going to be archaic meanings or really secondary or maybe even tertiary, quaternary, whatever. Just meanings that aren't the first ones you think of when you see that word. So just read around, read the vocabulary and context, read the context, do it. Read the little blurb before the main passage. I know half the time it says, this is a novel that was written in Belgium in 1933 and translated, you say, oh god, nobody cares about this. That may be true, but a lot of the time it contains useful information about who wrote the passage, why, what the setting is, blah, blah, blah. So that'll help with tone, intent, the point of the passage, etc. So you're going to want to search for command of evidence. So the best evidence for the answer to the previous question is at blah blah, and we'll give you 4 different line references that you'll have to go look up because they're just going to have ellipses. They'll have maybe 2 words, ellipsis, and then 2 words at the end. And mark the questions right before them, because that way when you see the one that you've marked before it, you'll say, oh, when I answer this, I need to mark with my pencil where I found the answer, so that way when I'm looking at the command of evidence answers, I can probably just say, okay, well, I know I got the answer here, see if it matches one of the questions, or one of the answers to the question, say, oh, okay, that matches the answer I already had in my mind, that must be the right answer. Which is the best way to do really any SAT question, math, reading, writing, whatever, because if it matches the answer you already had in your head, chances are it's right. So there you go. More reading strategies. You want to use tone words, which are adverbs or adjectives that describe something to give you a clue as to what the author is implying but not stating directly. You don't want to go too far astray from what's actually stated to make an inference. You might read something like, minds are like parachutes, they function only when open, and implies that being closed-minded inhibits learning and intelligent people are open to new ideas. That doesn't imply that intelligent people should always assume other people's ideas are better than their own. It just means intelligent people should be open-minded and willing to listen to other people's ideas, whether they eventually agree with them or not. Graphs, charts, etc. The SAT added this to compete with the ACT science section. Either way, on either test, do not choose answers that cannot be directly answered from the graph or chart. That is, if a chart shows braking distance increases with speed but doesn't mention water on the brakes, the correct answer cannot and will not be braking distance increases when brakes are wet, or you should allow the car to slow naturally before stepping on the brake pedal in order to reduce wear and lengthen brake life. That's a great idea. Do it all the time when I'm driving my car, but it's not relevant to the graph. So what I like to tell a lot of my students is think like a meathead. Just think very literally. If it's not in the passage or on the graph, it doesn't exist, even if it's part of the work not excerpted for the passage. So if you're thinking, hey, I know, I had to read this for biology or English or something. Yes, but maybe the part that you're seeing that's listed as a possible answer on the author says all of the things except this, it's not in the passage, it's not on the graph, so it doesn't exist, even though you know it exists because you read the entire work. Okay, so paired passages. You want to read the first passage, then do the questions that are about the first passage. They're usually the first questions. Then go back, read the second passage, and answer those questions. Why? Because many distractor, that is wrong answers, detail things from the second passage while they're asking about the first passage. You can't fall for those wrong answers if you haven't read the second passage. So you might want to ask yourself also why these passages were put together. How do they relate to each other? They probably represent different views on the same issue. I guarantee you there'll be questions such as the author of passage 1 would respond to the author of passage 2's point that by replying da-da-da-da-da. So they're going to say, well, how do these two authors have different ideas on the same subject or related subjects? So you want to make sure that you keep track of what passage 1 says, so what passage 1's author would probably think, and what passage 2 says, and what passage 2 author would probably think, because it's an easy trick to present an answer that gets them backwards, that they put something passage 1's author would say in passage 2's author's mouth and vice versa. So obviously if they get it backwards, that's not the right answer. Use your common sense. If an answer doesn't make sense to you, it's probably wrong unless the passage is from a really old work. Maybe it's from a time where people thought differently than they do today. And again, make sure the answer you choose is supported by evidence. So, as many test prep people say, don't answer questions from memory. Find the evidence, and as I said before, this is especially important if you've read the passage before it happens. You know, some passages are from important historical documents or accepted from classic texts in whatever field they're from. You can know the text, discuss something that's an answer choice, but if it's not in the excerpt, the part they use in the passage, it doesn't exist, and it's a wrong answer. If they cite, they say, well, all of the answers, all of these are evidence used in the passage except, and the one that is in the work but it's not in the passage, guess what? That is the exception, so that is the wrong, in quotes, wrong answer, which makes it the right answer there when they're giving you an accept question. If it's a what is implied question, make sure it's a logical next step. So you want to contrast words that, contrast words would imply the part not stated contradicts with the part that is stated. So if you tell me, if you say, hey John, I really liked your essay, but I can reasonably infer, and inferring means what I do when you imply something and I get your point, I understand, is you're about to tell me what you didn't like about it. You get called in by your teacher or your coach, hey, I really liked what you did and you're doing a really good job. You're like, okay, what's the but here? You know, same thing on the job. Hey, I want to tell you what a great job you're doing. I'm like, okay, I know this is my boss's tactful way of telling me that I screwed something up and they're really concerned about it or whatever. Okay, the smart kid answer. In case you haven't heard it, don't pick the answer with a vocabulary word you don't know if you're not sure about an answer, whether or not it's a vocabulary word. Most likely it's a smart kid answer designed to fool kids who don't know the meaning of the word, but those kids who maybe aren't the most smart kids, not the smartest kids, they are going to figure smart kids know it. Definitely kids in my classes when I was in high school, I'm sure some of them looked at things like, that looks like a word John Linneball would use, so I'm gonna pick that so people will think I'm as smart as he is. And then it's like, oh no, that word doesn't mean anything that has to do with the answer to that question. I'm sorry. Anyway, so most people know that. If you didn't, you know it now. However, don't let that advice stop you from picking the quote smart kid answer if you know the other choices are wrong. If you've already eliminated the other choices and you don't know what the word means in the answer that's left, doesn't matter, pick it because you know the other ones are wrong. If an answer is partly wrong, it's all wrong. Just as people like to say, a half-truth is a whole lie. So the math version of the smart kid answer, in case you're wondering, is cannot be determined from the information given. There was a kid in my classes, wasn't me, who was really good at math. I'm sure a lot of kids thought that, that guy would say, oh, I'm going to use this because I'll bet Jim could explain to me why you can't determine this from the information given. I'm sure if they come talk to Jim afterwards and say, oh, no, you can do that. They don't give it to you explicitly, but you can tell because it's a right angle or blah, 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 blah. So the writing/editing section doesn't have to be a smart kid answer. Well, it doesn't have one, is guess what I'm trying to say here is, it doesn't have a smart kid answer that I've seen, but you should be okay with picking no change as an answer. I guess maybe a smart kid answer might be who versus whom, something like that, where you're not sure. I know some of the things you've learned over the years, you'd say, well, that doesn't sound right, but I remember my English teacher taught us some things that don't sound right, are right, even though nobody uses them. So just go with your common sense. We're going to learn a couple things that are counterintuitive. They go against your common sense, but they are actually the right answer. Let's do that. Okay, so the writing passage editing section. No change is just as likely to be a correct answer as any. In fact, in the Barron's book that I use, I think it's a little more likely to be the right answer than most. But anyway, at least 25% of the time, that's 1/4, because there's 4 answer choices, no change is going to be the right answer. And again, the best way to do it is just read it and think, well, what do you think should go there? If it sounds right, leave it alone. If you're thinking something else should go there, then look to see if the word that you chose is one of the answer choices. If it is, pick that. And if you can't figure it out, well, we'll talk about that in a second. So you want to read the passage to figure out where sentences and paragraphs belong. They will have questions on both the SAT and the ACT. It's no accident because the SAT basically just copied the ACT wholesale with this whole passage editing thing. They're going to ask, sentence 5 belongs at the beginning of the paragraph, at the end of the paragraph, where it is now. So just go read it and think about, well, okay, where does this go if I want to have something that makes sense? You should be able to figure it out if you're thinking about it. So don't just read it looking for grammatical errors or for punctuation errors. Actually try to think about the meaning when you're reading it. Especially they might give you some things where they're going to give you a question where they ask you, assume the writer is trying to do this. They're trying to write an article that discusses one aspect of whatever it's about. So all the choices are likely to be grammatically correct, but only one of them will actually address the correct issue, the facts that they wanted to address, have the tone that it wants you to address, etc. So make sure you pick that. If you're having trouble telling which is the right answer, make sure that you haven't glossed over, skimmed over, the actual purpose that the writer is supposed to be serving here. Okay, please know the rules of punctuation, parallelism, etc. So parallelism means all the verb forms or clauses should look as much like each other as possible. I like skiing, comma, shooting, comma, and singing. Not I like to ski, shooting, and to sing. See, because these are all the gerund or ing forms, skiing, shooting, singing, whereas to ski is the infinitive form, then shooting, that's the gerund form, and to sing. I know. I don't think anybody taught me that when I was in high school, so I had to learn this to start doing SAT review. If you didn't learn that either, hey, maybe you went to the same high school I did. I don't know. Anyway, you want to know that parenthetical phrases, they don't have to be set off in parentheses. They must be set off with the same punctuation on both ends. So it should look like this. Dash, see what I mean? Dash, it has to be set off with dashes. If I have a dash in one end and a comma on the other, it's not right. So an incorrect form would be, my car, dash, which I bought this year, then comma. See, no, there should be either both dashes or both commas. Is a Ford Mustang GT. Correct, car, dash, my car, which I bought this year, dash, is a Ford Mustang GT. All right, more writing section tips. So you need to know that they and their are not appropriate gender-neutral singular pronouns in SAT or ACT land. You want to use he or she or his or her. Who versus whom? Who is the subject? Whom is the object? So it's for whom the bell tolls, not for who the bell tolls. Ask not for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. Anyway, so if you could use him, is the bell tolling for him? Yes, the bell tolls for him. Then you could say, for whom the bell tolls. He, okay, who is at the door? Well, you'd say, is he at the door? Yes, who is at the door? So you could say, who is at the door? Is he at the door? All right, so you get it. If you can use he, use who. If you could use him, use whom. This is he, it is I, same idea. So even though if I pick up the phone and someone asks, hi, is John there? If I say this is he, they're going to pause for a second. What? If I say this is him, everyone's going to understand it. Guess what? This is he is actually the correct grammar. So it is I. Nobody who is a native speaker of English ever uses that. So I know my English teacher when I was in 8th grade said that's how they knew it was the exchange student when she was in college. Their Chinese exchange student roommate would say, it is I, if she knocked and they asked who it was. So same idea. These are the few things that sound weird but are correct. Other than that, just use your common sense. If you have 3 answers and they're all very similar, chances are the 4th is the right answer, and the test maker, whether it's the ACT or SAT, is trying to distract you with meaningless differences between the 3 similar choices. And even if only 2 are similar, chances are those 2 are wrong, since there can be only one correct answer to a multiple choice question. So if 3 of them all look very similar and you can't see any obvious differences between them, some difference in style, and you're not sure why one would be wrong and why wouldn't be, chances are they're all okay, but they all have some problem that only the 4th answer actually takes care of. All right. Stop studying. Okay, the night before the test. Stop studying at a reasonable time. Look, there are neurological reasons, and I've written about it in my blog a few years ago, why you can only learn so much at one time. Cram studying is physically impossible. Just a very vague overview of it. Your brain produces certain proteins when you're learning. I'm sure there's a neuroscientist who's listening to this who's pulling his hair out over this, but anyway, basically, with my massively oversimplified model, your brain can only produce so much of a protein for learning at this time, or whatever it has to do for you to learn something and remember it. Cram studying is literally physically impossible. So, a little review the night before the test is really all you're going to be able to do. So study a little each night before the test so you can build this up, and study a little the actual night before the test. Basically, you're going to want to treat the night before the test like the night before the first day of school when you were a little kid. You want to lay out your little outfit you're going to wear, put all your things, your ID, your admission ticket, calculator, extra batteries, EpiPen, whatever meds you're cleared to use, you know, your little snack and your drink and everything in a clear plastic bag, and have your clothes ready. So, you know, just be ready to go. Go to bed early. This is not a partying night. However you want to define partying, unless to you party means sleep, then hey, party on, party all you want. Or, you know, it's not a gaming night. Don't stay up playing whatever game you like to play online. Now's not the night. All right. Did you find this video useful? Please like it and subscribe to this channel. Neither action can cost you anything. You'll be alerted about my new videos. Why do I care? Well, it's simple. YouTube doesn't let me share any ad revenue unless I have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours of view time in a year. While many people are watching these, I don't have 4,000 hours of watch time, and I don't have anywhere near 1,000 subscribers. So for the same reasons, you're not only welcome, but encouraged to share links to this video, put it in playlists, etc. I'm always happy to read and respond to constructive criticism or suggestions for new videos. On the other hand, I do reserve the right to delete comments from and block those who specialize in destructive criticism, you know, trolls, people who just want to be insulting for its own sake, or things that are off topic, you know, spammers, disturbed people, whatever. Please don't put that on my channel. And contact me. If you want to contact me, you can call me 415-623-4251. You can email me at john@johnlinnebaugh.com. You can mail me at 1859 Powell Street, number 109, San Francisco, California, 94133. Thanks for watching. Copyright issue. I don't think I've abused anyone's copyright. I think everything I've used is fair use. But if you have a problem, contact me. Thanks. And here's a little more contact information if you need it. You can contact me on Facebook. My Facebook page is www.facebook.com/Linnebaugh-tutoring. Instagram, www.instagram.com/john.linnebaugh.tutoring. Phone is 415-986-7355 if you want to use my home office phone instead of my cell phone. Email john@johnlinnebaugh.com. Website www.johnlinnebaugh.com. Testpreparation.locals.com is my test preparation community page, and there will be some special bonus things up there shortly. All right, hope you're having a good day. Talk to you later. Good luck on the SAT or the ACT, whatever you're taking. Thanks. Bye.